Right. Well, thank you, Ross, for attending this interview. We have a lot to talk about. I have a few questions here, and if there's anything else you would like to elaborate on, then we'll take it from there.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I've
Okay,
just woken up, so I'll try and answer and be as talkative as possible.
No problem. This will probably work out fine. No problem. So the first question, and you must have had it 1,000 times by now, but you decided on the title of this album when? I mean, this is totally crazy. You have this album, you call it Virus, and then this whole pandemic is happening. So did you ever consider changing the title or the subject or release it later at a later time or whatever?
So we set out in the beginning of 2018 to embark upon a 2-album journey. And the starting point for these records really were the Roman numerals that represented album 5 being the V and album 6 being the VI. And we came up with this idea that we would revisit our song The Cockroach King and form almost like a Marvel style kind of character piece based on the Cockroach King, which would spread across 2 albums. So we'd coined the titles right at the start, at the beginning of 2018, Vector and Virus, with those.
So this was planned all along.
Correct. Yeah. Obviously, skip forward to March of this year, and we are wrapping up the mixes and finalizing the artwork, and we've even had begun to start signing things for the pre-orders of the record, and with all the Virus artwork in place, and things started to unravel in a big way, and that was when our tour got cancelled midway, and we were stumped in a way. We were aware of the situation in China and how that was developing somewhat, but we never imagined it would escalate in the way it has, and there we were with this album Virus, which was already planned.
Yeah. Well, this explains a lot, because a couple of questions I had about the music on Virus and Vector, they are very much alike in the sense that they are very riff-based. They have the same theme, obviously, because it's the same story. And are you planning to develop this direction more in the next couple of years, or is this a one-off 2-album project?
Yeah, to be perfectly honest with you, this was a self-contained thing. I mean, the metal side of our prog metal sound has always been there, but we really wanted to focus on that for these 2 records. With Vector being like a really shorter, more focused album in that regard, and Vector expanding on it a little bit, but obviously keeping the sound consistent and the lyrics and concepts as well. Where they are meant to be companion pieces.
So we have a yellow album and a red album now. So is there going to be a blue album like King Crimson did in the 80s? Do you remember the 3 of the Perfect Pair?
Of course, they were the first King Crimson albums I ever purchased. In fact,
really? Okay.
Beats was the first one I ever purchased. Yeah, I heard of King Crimson, and I was aware of In the Court of the Crimson King, obviously, but hadn't really ventured into their catalogue. So I'm fully aware. Perhaps there'll be a blue Haken album. Yeah, why not?
Yeah. Back to Virus. To me, the sound is very similar as on Vector, but it is nevertheless a bit more mellow. There's more melody. Do you perceive that also, or is this?
Yeah, absolutely. We wanted to expand on the sounds that we're known for, as well as what we were doing with Vector. We wanted to make the heavier parts even heavier, and the softer melodic parts the bit to resonate a little bit more.
Absolutely, more dynamic. Yeah, that's
correct,
what I would say. Yeah.
So that's what we set out to achieve. Yeah.
Haken has a very recognizable sound by now. What would you say are the ingredients for that?
That's good to know, because we've always approached it from a very eclectic point of view. So to hear that there is a distinctive Haken sound is actually quite interesting to me, because I think a lot of the time we're all over the place, but maybe that is the distinctive sound, and
it's probably yeah. I mean, I could point out any single individual in the band and say, okay, this sound is typically Haken, and so the total is what makes Haken, of course. But your voice obviously is something that is very recognizable to anyone, and as soon as you start to sing, okay, this is Haken. There's no doubt about that. But also guitar, Rich and Charlie are sort of amazingly intertwining with each other. This is incredible how they sound together. And so I could go on for each and every one of you, but I think there is definitely a recognizable Haken sound.
Yeah, I mean, when we started out, we had two keyboards as well. I mean, Richard was doubling up actually on guitars and keyboards.
Remember,
So there was always this opportunity to interchange and switch things up, and have two keyboard parts running at the same time and two guitar parts running at the same time, and it just opened up a lot more options when it came to the compositions and to expand the sound. So I mean, I don't think that's ever really stopped. I mean, Richard's playing keyboards less these days, but that's part of it. Having the six members who can play multiple instruments, I think that's part of it. Yeah.
I do like the new Haken sound. I also like the old Haken sound, if you can call it that, where you were doing more symphonic stuff. Mm-hmm. But I think the fact that Rich is hardly doing any keyboards on new albums anymore, that makes it definitely more prog metal than what you did before. Even though the sound of the guitar is still the same.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's not to say that he's not, writing stuff on the keyboard. No. He is, yeah. It's just when it comes to performances, that's always been left to Diego to handle the keyboards nowadays.
Yeah, I was very lucky because last year on Prognosis, I attended his session, Diego. And I was very impressed by this instrumental from Vector that he wrote, where he did most of the writing. I think he played it through nail by mouth. I think it was.
Yeah, it was definitely almost like the focus point of that album. And ironically, I wasn't involved in any of that.
No, that's true.
But I agree. It's a song that goes down very well live, and From the outside looking in, it was the piece that all of the band members were like focusing the most attention on, getting that song right.
That's ironic, isn't it? Yeah. And ironic too is that I really love your voice, but there's also you have tradition now to include the instrumental tracks when you do the deluxe version, and I love listening to those because it's so much better to hear what everyone does. It's not that you are in the way. Not at all, but it's nice to hear it also without your voice, so that it's becoming clear. And Nail by Mouth must have this appeal to people, I think, because it's very clear how complex and how virtuous everyone is in the band.
Yeah, people might be surprised to know that we actually started doing the instrumental cuts when we released Affinity, and it was actually my suggestion that we do that.
Oh, really? Okay.
For a couple of reasons. Bound by Gravity, for example, I found that piece was just so beautiful, like without vocals anyway, or just like the ambience. I'm quite into that new age kind of sounds as well. And secondly, like it served as a good kind of rehearsal disc for me whenever we're about to embark on a tour, and I've got these instrumentals there for me to practice to when I'm on my own. So double.
The ideal karaoke,
karaoke for everyone else as well. Yeah.
So, speaking about singing, who writes the lyrics or the majority of the lyrics? Are you writing them?
It's a complicated question to answer because on the first couple of albums, that was my, it was all me, lyrically.
Yeah,
and,
I knew. Yeah,
they gave me the space to kind of develop those concepts. When it came to the Mountain, we shared that responsibility. People in the band had stuff to say, and I welcomed that. That was cool. There was a lot of stuff that I'd written for the Mountain that actually got thrown in the bin because it had nothing to do with the kind of ideas that they had in mind. So, and the success of that record actually opened my eyes to the fact that collaboration was totally fine with me, and at the end of the day, I kind of had the editorial position. I had the license to change some phrases to make them work for my voice phonetically.
Yeah.
So I quite enjoyed that process as well. Sometimes it's quite nice to edit that stuff. Make
it worked out fine because I think that The Mountain was your international breakthrough, wasn't it?
Yeah, and this has been the case, very much the case up until Virus. I think the guys wanted, with the exception of Prosthetic, I think Charlie came up with the chorus lyrics for Prosthetic, but the rest of that record was ultimately my lyrics, in full. We obviously fleshed out some ideas between us while we were all together, and that was largely to do with vocal melodies. But yeah, I was responsible for the Virus lyrics.
Speaking about the concept, okay, it's obvious now that Virus and Vector are two parts of the same story, but the video of Canary Yellow has confused me a bit because I couldn't see where this would fit in. Is that difficult to explain, or don't you want to? It could be you probably would like to have some things left to discover by the listeners, I suppose.
Yeah, well, I think it's going to take probably some time for people to digest the new record. It moves away somewhat from the 50s psych ward setting that we set up in Vector. So this character has evolved, and it starts to the concept starts to elaborate and not necessarily solely focus on this one character, but really the effects that he has on the world around him and other people and everyday lives. So Canary Yellow really touches lyrically and on the videos you can see more as a metaphor, but on how Virus as a metaphor affects people's lives, and there are various other things that Virus stands for, not necessarily a literal virus, but
yes, like Vector has several different meanings as well.
Correct, and
the word Vector, yeah.
on various songs. I mean, we talk about overpopulation on the song Carousel. We talk about mental illness, mental health, depression on Invasion, and so yeah, it touches on other subjects which are more relatable to a vaster audience. At the same time, we keep in mind where this character is in the grand scheme of things.
Well, to me, some of the clues you put in Virus were very obvious musically. There were some very specific themes from Vector that were reappearing, but there's probably a lot that I'm missing. Can you give us some hints about Easter eggs and clues that are in there?
Well, there's quite a few, and there's an element of that. I like to leave these surprises up to the we will do. Like to leave these surprises up to the listener to discover.
I understand. Yeah, no problem.
For sure. We talked about Neil by Mouth earlier, and the big part of the Messiah complex was almost to translate some of those ideas into vocal lines and melodies and stuff like that. So there'll be a lot of things in that piece, particularly that people will recognise, and that gives us like enjoyment in putting these Easter eggs in and parts of the puzzle.
Yeah. How was it to be on tour with Devin? Being a headline touring for most of the year and then suddenly going back into support. Was that difficult, or was it a nice experience?
Yeah, you say going back, but we've really not done that many support tours. So this was the first major one that we've gone.
I see.
We've done a few runs with we did a run with Between the Buried and Me in Europe once, and it wasn't a long tour really. So this was an extensive tour that we latched onto for the first time, and it was kind of a new experience for us. I've been a huge fan of Devin for many years. Through high school, I grew up with his records, Physicist and Terrier, on the rotation for me when I was younger. So I looked up to him and have been following his career ever since, and really amazing to be. We had actually bumped into each other before at Prog Power USA, and we were on before him, and incredible experience, amazing musician, really inspiring. I'd mentioned this before in other interviews, but the way he conducts himself and prepares himself for a show was inspiring to me. Like, I usually go on stage quite tense and full of anticipation, but he's very zen, very calm.
Okay.
And cool. I think, and I tried to adopt some of that, and that really helped my performance. Remaining calm on stage, I thought that was inspirational.
Are there any other bands or artists that are an inspiration to you or to the band as a whole?
I mean, the obvious one, it's been talked to death now, but Dream Theater was our main inspiration for becoming a band, I would say. I remember, as a kind of late teen, early 20s, sitting around with Rich and going over the Dream Theater DVD concerts, and we were just visualizing ourselves getting to that one day, and somehow we've been able to manifest that, and it's really cool. They were huge for us, but these days our inspirations are coming from all sorts of really odd places. I know I'm actually looking really inspired by Jacob Collier these days. He's a really young UK musician who's been taken under the wing of Quincy Jones, and he's in that ilk, but his approach to music's really fresh. And
COVID-19 is making a mess of the whole music industry, so your promotion is going to fall through now, and you are doing this interview. Maybe you wouldn't have done so many interviews if you were going to promote in the usual way. What are your plans for now?
Yeah, it certainly does suck that we can't go out there and perform this stuff immediately. However, we were hungry just to wrap up this period of time, these two albums that we dedicate the last few years on, and we didn't feel it was the right thing to do to delay that any further than it needed to be, and we're just hungry to kind of get on with the next chapter. So well, no doubt it hasn't started yet, but no doubt, I mean, in the next month or so, we'll start putting our brainstorming hats back on for album 7 and just keep going with it. Yeah. Meanwhile, I think Richard's got his solo ideas on the boil. He's going to hopefully get a follow up to the Cocoon, because that was a really good record that he made. Yeah. And even myself, I've been chipping away at home writing my own songs, so who knows, there's potential for solo projects to come out.
Well, thank you very much. I would like to conclude the official part, so I'm going to stop the recording.